What if the next world war doesn't begin with missiles or tanks, but with a single line of code? Imagine waking up one morning and your city is dead. Power out, bank systems frozen, hospitals on backup generators, traffic lights dark, airports grounded. No explosions, no uniforms, just silence, confusion. And a slow collapse that begins in servers and spreads into every corner of daily life. That is not science fiction. That is cyberwarfare, and the conflict between Ukraine and Russia has shown the world how quickly the digital and physical fronts can merge. How fragile modern societies are when their networks fail, and how governments and crowds of volunteers can and will fight back in cyberspace. Weeks before Russian troops entered Ukraine, dozens of government websites were defaced with chilling messages. Be afraid. Expect the worst. Then destructive malware like Whispergate and Hermetic Wiper appeared, erasing critical systems and corrupting backups. Russia had been testing cyber strategies for years. From attacks on Estonia in 2007, Georgia in 2008, Ukraine's power grid in 2015, to the global NotPetya attack in 2017. Once unleashed, digital weapons can cascade beyond intended targets and create global economic damage. Imagine a hospital's medical equipment going offline during a pandemic because a line of code destroyed a server hundreds of miles away. This is the terrifying reality governments and civilians face in cyberwarfare. When soldiers invaded Ukraine in February 2022, the country faced a two-front crisis: physical combat and cyber collapse. 2 days later, Digital Minister Mikhailo Fedorov tweeted, "We are creating an IT army. We need digital talents." Within hours, volunteers, hackers, and cybersecurity experts worldwide joined. They targeted Russian news sites, banking portals, transport systems, and propaganda outlets, launching DDoS attacks, exposing internal documents, and countering disinformation. This crowdsourced cyber defense became a force multiplier and raised legal and ethical questions. When civilians hack back, who is accountable for mistakes or collateral damage? The IT army was not a traditional military unit. It was an improvised, decentralized network. Telegram channels became the command hubs. Volunteers coordinated attacks, shared malware signatures, and even built simple tools to protect Ukrainian institutions. Thousands of individuals worldwide, many acting without direct government oversight, suddenly became part of a national defense system. Some were seasoned cybersecurity professionals. Others were enthusiastic amateurs, but together they created a new kind of digital resistance. And while much of their work was improvised, their impact was tangible, disrupted enemy communications, slowed logistics, and shifted narratives online. Russia's cyber units, in contrast, were deliberate, consolidated, and highly experienced. Units within the GRU and FSB had spent years building capabilities that combined espionage, sabotage, and influence operations. Their playbook included destructive malware, espionage frameworks, supply chain insertions, targeted phishing campaigns, and large-scale denial of service attacks. Cyber attacks were synchronized with disinformation campaigns, social media, and state-run channels amplified fear, confusion, and uncertainty, aiming to undermine civilian morale and erode public trust. The cumulative effect was psychological as much as operational. Control over the perception of reality became a battlefield in itself. Yet Ukraine did not stand alone. Private companies became critical allies in the fight. Microsoft, Google, Cloudflare, and dozens of smaller cybersecurity firms helped maintain connectivity, patch vulnerabilities, and counter attacks. SpaceX's Starlink satellites became a lifeline. When fiber networks were destroyed and mobile systems disrupted, Starlink kept command centers, hospitals, and journalists online. This hybrid network of governments, corporations, and volunteers created an improvised yet resilient defense, but also raised important questions. When private companies act as de facto national defense, what legal and ethical responsibilities do they hold?
Ukraine also struck back. Hacking back disrupted Russian logistics, banking, and media systems, while leaking information about mercenary movements and internal military operations. These operations had tactical effects: temporary outages, disrupted supply chains, and psychological pressure on adversaries. But they also carried risks: misattribution, collateral damage, and potential escalation. Non-state actors added chaos. Hacktivists, volunteers, and criminal gangs joined the battlefield, sometimes acting independently. While some actions were strategic, others were reckless, spilling personal data of civilians and raising serious ethical questions. The global impact of Ukraine's cyber defense was immediate. Governments worldwide accelerated their cyber capabilities. The United States reinforced Cyber Command, NATO elevated cyber defense as a core mission, and countries across Asia and the Middle East expanded offensive and defensive programs. Corporations hardened software supply chains, auditors demanded stricter verification, and the public became aware that cyberattacks could touch their daily lives. Electricity, hospitals, banks, even grocery supply chains were no longer abstract risks. At the same time, a new kind of digital diplomacy began to emerge. Tech companies found themselves at the front lines of war. Microsoft, Google, and Starlink provided critical support to Ukraine's communications and defenses, blurring the line between private enterprise and national security. International law struggled to keep up. Was a cyber attack on a nation's power grid an act of war, or merely sabotage? Could private companies retaliate on behalf of a country? The answers remained unclear, and the world watched as policy, technology, and ethics collided in real time. Meanwhile, cybercrime surged under the fog of war. Ransomware groups exploited the chaos, targeting both sides and even neutral countries. Intelligence agencies expanded recruitment of hackers, offering amnesty or funding to those with the right skills. Digital mercenaries became a new commodity, hired to breach, disrupt, or manipulate public opinion. The distinction between military-grade cyber tools and criminal malware blurred dangerously, as leaked exploits from state arsenals ended up in black markets within days. Looking forward, 3 technological trends amplify the stakes. Artificial intelligence accelerates attacks and defenses. It can autonomously search for vulnerabilities, craft phishing campaigns, or analyze traffic patterns to detect intrusions faster than human teams. Supply chain insecurity is a persistent risk. A single corrupted software update can compromise thousands of systems worldwide, as NotPetya taught. Finally, quantum computing could soon threaten encryption itself, potentially rendering sensitive communications vulnerable on a global scale. These emerging technologies make both offensive and defensive cyber operations faster, more scalable, and harder to control. Resilience is the key. Governments and societies must diversify communications, satellites, radio, low-bandwidth systems, to maintain civilian connectivity. Infrastructure should be segmented, backed up offline, and auditable. Public awareness and emergency drills reduce panic and improve response. International coordination, transparent reporting, and clear rules of engagement for hacking back are essential to prevent uncontrolled escalation. The human cost of cyberwar is real. Hospitals go offline, food supply chains are disrupted, businesses fail, and psychological stress mounts. Soldiers, emergency responders, and journalists face additional pressures. Every line of code can affect human lives. Ukraine's experience shows that modern conflict is no longer just armies on the battlefield. Civilians, corporations, and volunteers are all participants, which makes ethical responsibility, proportionality, and accountability more important than ever. The Ukraine-Russia cyberwar proves that cyberspace is now a primary battlefield, messy, ambiguous, and deeply intertwined with civilian life. Hacking back can defend a nation, but misuse can cause uncontrolled harm. Nations face a choice: build rules, resilient systems, and verification mechanisms now, or risk miscalculation, escalation, and widespread suffering. The next major crisis may begin not with a bomb, but with a breach. Societies must respond in ways that protect human life, preserve order, and maintain accountability. If you found this deep dive into cyberwarfare valuable, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on the hidden battles shaping our world today.